Alright everybody, you're listening to the Year Zero Report, and this is going to be your daily brief for the 1st of September, 2022. We made it to September, surprisingly, right? That's wild. I think things are just going to keep getting worse as we move forward, but we made it. We made it to September. We can mark August off the books there, and it was a hot August indeed. We got a lot to go over as always. We're seeing a lot in the debt markets here. Debt market surging, much like we've talked about over the last few days here on the daily briefing. It's not looking good. Markets are reacting just as we thought they would, as we saw the 10-year yield surge once again. The dollar pumping, making new highs, new local highs. But we're going to go over all of that financial. We have an article I talked about yesterday that I wasn't able to share with you guys, talking about the Pentagon and their worries of U.S. armed stockpiles as we're sending munitions across over to Europe, now over to Taiwan. We're going to talk about the Pope. We're going to go over some education here in the U.S. and the detrimental effects of what CV has had on the public education system. We're going to talk about the Rockefellers and a new pledge that they're making against censorship, or rather for censorship. And we have, of course, some thermostats. 22,000 residents in Colorado were not able to access their thermostats. Or rather, they were able to access them, but they had no control over them. So we're going to talk about that and just how easily the government can step in and take control of resources such as controlling your heat and your air conditioning. We're going to look at the cyber threat map as the U.S. is getting pelted. If you guys have noticed your internet slowing down, laggy applications, anything running through Amazon Web Services, you would notice, and that's likely going to be cyber threats happening. So we'll go over that, and of course we'll end the daily brief by looking at the day-ahead power usage across the Eurozone, which does seem, on a slightly positive note, to have gone down a little bit looking forward into tomorrow. But just like any other market, there's going to be pullbacks, there's going to be new highs, so it's nothing to get too excited about and think that we've made it out of the woods yet. But I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you guys are stocking up. Hope you guys are paying attention. You're waking up your friends. You're waking up your family. You're showing everybody this content, showing everybody other content. We need people to wake up for this. This is this is wild. It's a house of cards, in my opinion, and it's all going to topple down soon. We're one mistake away from seeing the whole thing implode. One of the biggest things that are on my books, I'm watching like a hawk, is obviously the global debt market. The U.S. debt market is a huge driver in that. So we've been monitoring the 10-year treasury yields across the debt market. They're surging. We're seeing liquidity dry up across all global markets. If we don't see the World Economic Forum or Bill Gates or anybody like that, right, step in and bring in a surprise that we weren't expecting to usher in a more rapid collapse, I would imagine the final card would be the implosion of the debt market, not just in the United States, but the global debt market. So if we make it that far to see that happen, that'll probably be the final blow, in my opinion. So we're going to go over that. We're going to go over quite a bit, but let's hop right into it. All right, so starting right off, we're going to look at the debt market right off the bat. We've been covering this the last few days. As you guys can see here, we're looking at a daily chart of the 10-year treasury yield. You can see that we managed to blow above the supply zone, and we're almost up to new highs. So today we peaked out at about 3.3%. This is unprecedented. We don't want to see this keep climbing. As we're going to go over it as well, the U.S. stock market, Bitcoin, a couple other asset classes. But the markets are not reacting well to this. We saw this surge in the debt market this morning, and immediately we saw a reaction to the downside across multiple indexes. So you guys can see here, what we want to see is it could pull back down and test this as support, and hopefully we lose that. So something of this nature, right, where we break up, we don't make a new higher high, and we end up coming down, maybe range within, and then we see a rejection, right, back down to around this region, if not down to the demand zone. That would be the most optimal setup, so that we could see some money leave the bond market, maybe go back into the stocks, other equities, commodities, things of that nature. That reminds me, something I want to talk about too. When we do see this debt market implosion, the first thing that's going to balloon are going to be commodities. Absolutely commodities. And if we're able to move money to be able to purchase commodities, then that's where I would be moving my money towards. Um, Things like food, things like precious metals, commodities, right? So those will balloon first. We haven't seen it yet, as many people predicted that we would see as soon as inflation started becoming rampant and the Fed made it pronounced that we would see commodities, gold, silver, cryptos surge, and it's actually been quite the opposite. We've seen a large pullback. And my reasoning for that is because all the prices that you're seeing for all these different assets are not the real prices. These are everything's manipulated. Every market's manipulated. All these prices can be anything they want them to be. Just punch them into the computer and you have it. Hence why we saw oil go to negative 40 in 2020. If you saw negative 40 oil, they can bring anything to negative 40. It's just a number, right? It's not a fair value price that we're seeing. It's all manipulated markets. So moving right along here, let's look at the dollar. So as we saw the 10-year surge, of course the dollar broke out of its local high back here. We're now still above it. If they flip this into support, I would expect that we continue to press higher up into perhaps the 110, 112, 111, 112 area, coming up into this KCB band. Once we touch this KCB band, I would expect that we do see a pullback, likely into this demand zone now, much like we saw here, right? So we peaked up, we touched, and then we pulled back to the previous demand zone before testing the supply zone, which we now have flipped into a demand zone. All right, the euro, as we talked about, I expect the euro to range about. We're testing that demand zone again. If we break through this, like I said, it's game over for the euro. Overall, though, let's see, we're getting some alerts in here. So let's see what we're getting alerts in. This is likely on Bitcoin, I would assume. Yeah, sure are. We'll go over that here in a minute too, just real briefly. But what I want to do is go ahead and clear these alerts out of here, just so that we're not being interrupted throughout this broadcast. So let's kill them all. Stop all. Boom. All right, sorry about that, guys. So we're looking at the euro. We're testing that demand zone. Like I mentioned in the other videos this week, I would expect that we range about unless we see some catalyst event where it just sends the euro plummeting, right? So something where we're just ranging about in this tight range there. So ES, one exclamation, this is going to be the futures market for the S&P. So we touched on this a lot this week, where I expected that we would see a pullback from that supply zone and then likely into this fib level, which sits at about 3915. And that's exactly where we pulled down to today. And you can see that we're actually buying it back up. So we know that this was a strong buy-up zone. So we nailed it right on that. If we end up losing the support, our next target's going to be the demand zone down here. No lower than 3639. But much like we were just talking about with the euro, would likely range within these two Fibonacci levels. And those two levels are from the bottom to the top here. If we reclaim above something like this and we flip this, then we'll look to go up higher, right? Perhaps a deviation. If we fall down, we could deviate below. And if it deviates, pops back up, reclaim. And we'll range about, right? So we're just trading a break on that. But this was an excellent call in my opinion. And we're seeing other indexes fall like this as well because of the global debt market and the 10-year and other bonds surging. So let's just look at the NASDAQ real quick. I know we haven't covered it a lot this week, but it's the same idea, right? Pulling back. And we'll touch Bitcoin real quick. This could be a messy chart because I am trading Bitcoin rather rapidly. Actually, we'll save this for another video. Maybe we'll do a crypto session on the weekends, right? Maybe on a Sunday. I think that'd be a good idea. So let's move over to some stories. Yesterday I was talking about how Biden wants to send 1.1 billion in arms over to Taiwan. And I also commented on how we're sending a surplus of ammunition, supplies, and money over to Ukraine. And I don't expect that to stop anytime soon. But I mentioned that I had come across an article that the Pentagon was worried about the stockpiles here in the United States. So let's look at that here. Pentagon stockpiles uncomfortably low amid Ukraine transfers, officials admit. It is not at the level we would like to go into combat. This is alarming, guys. right off the bat, they start off with a quote: "It is not at the level we would like to go into combat." Yikes! Red alert, right? I believe this is all orchestrated. I believe what we're seeing in the financial markets is orchestrated. The energy crisis across the Eurozone, as well as other parts of the world, this is all orchestrated collapse. If you've been following my work on Telegram for the past 2 years, or prior to that, I've spoken on this for many years. This is the Great Reset. This is a multitude of things. It's not just the Great Reset. We're fighting against multiple factions with different goals. Just like there's different forms of patriots around the world, that overall we do have the same goal, but everybody has different issues that they're trying to solve, right? So it's the same on the other side. There's nefarious entities that have personal goals that they've been trying to achieve, whether it be for just a few years, or it's been over multiple decades, or perhaps even centuries. This is a biblical war, in my opinion, and this has been going on for a lot longer than just 100 years. This goes far, far back. But carrying right along here, the Pentagon's concerned. Our stockpiles are low. We continue to send assets out. This is going to have to stop. It's going to have to. And I would imagine with supply chain issues going on right now, that we're not producing ammunition, aircraft, artillery, things of that nature at the same pace as we were before any supply chain issues. So as we're sending out assets, we're also not producing at the same speed that we were prior. It's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. But this Zero Hedge article, everything, every video, every article, every picture I share with you guys, it's all going to be listed below in the show notes in the description. You can go through and select in order every story that we've covered for that day, so that you guys can share it yourself and feel comfortable knowing that it's coming from a reliable source, or at least that you could share the source. All right, so Pope Francis, this came out yesterday. Pope Francis, World War III has been declared. So he had a speech yesterday, and he declared that we are already in World War III. So this article goes on to say, Pope Francis said in a wide-ranging conversation with the editors of European Jesuit publications on May 19th, referring to Russia's attack against Ukraine. The conversation was published by the Italian Jesuit publication La Civiltà Catalytica, the secular newspaper La Stampa, on June 14th, and is sure to spark discussion. It goes on to quote what the Pope had said: "The world is at war." He said, "For me today, World War III has been declared. This is something that should give us pause for thought. What is happening to humanity that we have had 3 world wars in a century?" So I'm not a fan of the Pope. I do not follow the Vatican. I do not believe in the Vatican. I believe the Vatican is the first ever central bank, really, and remains one of the largest banks, and they are not working in our favor. But it's an ominous message here from the Pope. Whether he's trying to stoke fear, or it's just something that they're preparing for, and this follows what we saw from the Vatican, saying that they want to see all Vatican assets moved into the Vatican Bank by, I believe it was the 30th of September. I think the cutoff date is the 29th of September. So that's a very short time period to prepare for such financial movement. And now we're seeing quotes like this coming out from the Pope saying that we're already in a World War III, which to an extent I could agree with. We're fighting proxy wars from the United States. We might not have grounds on the boot. Grounds on the boot. We might not have boots on the ground in Europe, in Taiwan, and other places such as that. But we are sending mass amounts of funds, armament, and so forth, which is stoking the war. It's a proxy war. We're basically in it, right? Interesting and ominous message from the Pope here. So we're going to move right along over to the pandemic erased 2 decades of progress in math and reading. I am not a member of the New York Times, nor do I care to be a member of the New York Times. But basically what this article is covering is that over the last 2 years, we have seen a decrease, an actual erasal of 2 decades of progress in math and reading in the public education sector. I've heard many people speak on this over the last 2 years, their concerns before this became an evident thing, but sharing their concerns that this could be an issue, whether it was from masking and not being able to see mouth movement, enunciation, things of this nature, but also pulling the children out of school for such a long period of time. It varied from state to state on how long that went, but the damage was done, and now we're seeing the statistical evidence of that damage. It's sad to see this, and I would imagine it's similar results across the globe here. All right, so this is funny. You got to get a laugh out of this. So this is actually the Rockefeller Foundation. The Rockefeller Foundation is pledging through the Mercury project to boost CV-19 inoculation rates and counter public health and disinformation in 17 countries worldwide. Interesting, 17 countries, right? Something to pay attention to. Interesting anomaly, I suppose. But they're pledging, I believe it is 7.2 million. So the Social Science Research Council is providing 7.2 million to 12 teams advancing ambitious applied social and behavioral science to combat the growing global threat posed by low CV-19 inoculation rates and public health misinformation. Interesting. So my first thought is the Rockefellers funding anything, we should probably run the other direction. Kind of like when you see Soros funding something, right? These entities give themselves away, in my opinion, and this is why I think we will, in the end, no matter what, end out on top of this, because they have to show their hand. These dark entities that we're fighting with have to show their hand, and as more and more people are waking up, they're recognizing big brand names. I wouldn't call it a brand name, but I suppose you could. Seeing like the Rockefeller pouring money into something like this, especially so blatant as what it is going towards, it's a red flag right off the bat. So these things will not succeed. More and more people are calling it out as they see this stuff. It spreads immediately to so many other truthers. We're really getting the word out, and that's how we're preventing this stuff from actually progressing, right? So in the United States, we saw the health passes. So many people were calling ahead of the game on that before they even deployed them or talked about deploying them, that when the time came that they began shilling the idea of deploying such a technology, everybody just destroyed it. It was shared right away. These things will not come to pass, in my opinion. So let them spend the 7.2 million, which for the Rockefeller Foundation, I would imagine is change, really. It's hardly anything to them. So I find that actually a small pledge, in my opinion. So let's look over here. This is alarming where we're going. We've talked about the energy crisis all week over in the Eurozone. And I told you guys how I believe with all my heart that we're going to see that bleed into our economy sooner than later, probably within a few weeks, if not even sooner. This next article I'm going to go over with you guys actually proves that it's already hitting our shores here. These draconian measures will only increase if we allow them to. So moving right along, thousands of Xcel customers locked out of thermostats during an energy emergency. And this just happened, I believe, this morning. If not, it was yesterday. 22,000 people lost control of temperatures in their homes for hours on Tuesday. So yeah, it sounds like this was actually on Tuesday, a few days back in Denver. During the dog days of summer, it is important to keep your home cool. But when thousands of Xcel customers in Colorado tried adjusting the thermostats Tuesday, they learned they had no control over the temperatures in their own homes. People, this is alarming. I'm not saying run and get right off the grid today, but start making the necessary movements to be independent, self-sufficient, whether it's just starting off with your own garden, installing solar, going off the grid if you're able to do it in a timely fashion, stockpiling food, getting a generator, probably not a gas generator either, something that's going to be solar, something that's not going to emit fumes. Energy is a great one to look into. I know that they're about 30 days behind on delivery, but it is a great one. You can have it in your house. It's solar powered. It's not gas, and it has no sound. So nobody's going to hear that you have this generator running right when the shit hits the fan. Because it will. Believe me, it will. The shit is going to hit the fan. And those that are paying attention will be the best prepared, in my opinion. Now, of course, there's some things that we have no control over, such as a large attack over an entire city or something like that. But there are many, many things that we can prepare for. So please, I love you guys. I care for every one of you, and I hope that we can all make it through this. So please do the due diligence of what we need to do in these trying times. So if you guys have noticed, and I talked about it in the beginning of this episode here, internet speeds in the United States, at least where I'm located, have been terribly slow the last 30 days or so, and if anything, increasing over the past 90 days, but noticeably so over the last 30 days. Specifically, I would have to say, right after we saw Pelosi's visit over to Taiwan, I noticed a huge slowdown across my internet speeds, applications, anything running on Amazon Web Services, AWS, and it's continuing to do so. So if we look over at a cyber threat map, you'll see that we are just being pelted nonstop. It doesn't matter what time of day it is constantly coming in, inbound. A majority of these are coming across Europe right now. Late last night, about midnight my time, it was pretty quiet coming from Europe over into the US. Obviously, we see a lot of activity right now going off, hitting about the central of the US, but China's been relentless, nonstop. And if you guys want to follow this yourself, this is also going to be included in the show notes. Everything, every article, picture, video I show you will always be listed below. While we're talking about some housekeeping, let me get some housekeeping out of the way. Since it is the beginning of September, the 1st of September, if you guys want to support the content that I post here and also gain access to exclusive content or early access to content, you can go over to Year Zero Report Patreon, and you can support us over there by making as small as a $5 pledge up to, we have bundle deals as well, which will include all the different tiers. We have 6 different tiers over there. So if you're interested, go check it out, please. You don't have to make a pledge, but definitely check it out because there's tons of content, whether it's early access to guest interviews that we do have a few coming up over the next couple weeks, or you want to gain access to my digital library with over 100 titles, which is constantly updated monthly. We never take any off, but we only add more on. There's a lot going on over on the Patreon, so be sure to check that out. And since it's the 1st of the month, if you guys get in now, you guys get that whole month of content instead of subscribing on the last day of the month and only getting access for that last day before being charged on the 1st. So be sure to check that out. I'm gonna make sure I got everything in the housekeeping to go over. We went over financial, crazy over there. The Fed is not raising the overnight. I know I'm hopping around here, but I gotta hit this. The Fed going over, raising overnight rates is not going to tackle inflation, people. It is not. Nothing of what they've done is going to make a dent in it. If they wanted to tackle it, they would be far more aggressive, and they're not. They have a system on the back burner, whether it's central banking digital currencies or something that we might not have discovered yet. I would lean more towards CBDCs. They have the system on the back burner ready to deploy when they decide to usher in the financial collapse or it's ushered in by another entity. There is a system on the back burner ready to go. If they wanted to tackle inflation, they would have tackled it already. We're seeing the last moves of this archaic financial system. In my opinion, it's going to come crashing down. That's why I tell you guys every day, be prepared. Thank God every day for today. But this is inevitable. We've been kicking this can down the road for many, many, many years. Before '08, before the 70s, even when we were dealing with inflation back then, this can has been kicked down the road for a long, long time. But I hope you guys are paying attention. I'm sure you guys are. Many people are waking up. If it's not your friends telling you, it's your family. But we're doing a great job, and we got to keep it up. Let's go ahead and look at the day ahead electricity prices across the Eurozone. So we're actually seeing a little bit of a pullback for the day ahead for tomorrow, September 2nd. Nothing to get too excited about. Like I mentioned earlier, we're going to see pullbacks. We're going to see surges. This isn't even much of a pullback, but it is a pullback, and I'm sure that many members of these countries are relieved to see at least a 24-hour period of some decrease per megawatt euro charge. But it's still asinine, and it's going to get worse. Something I don't have up here with the source, but I'll include it in tomorrow's show, is Russia just declared that they will not be deploying any gas to countries that put a cap on Russian gas. They put a cap on it, price-wise, you're not getting anything. And I expected this. You can almost read this stuff like a book, the way it's been playing out now, especially if you've been following this for a few years. But I want to thank you guys for tuning in. It is the 1st of September. Let's see how this month goes. We'll make it through it. Things are going to get a little wild this month, I guarantee it. And then we go into October. There's going to be an October surprise. We all know it. But let's get through this one day at a time. One day at a time. Stock up. Stay true. Stay vigilant. And if you guys have any stories that you want coverage on, or you just simply want to talk about, please comment, like below. Share your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to talk with you guys. If you're in the United States, let's talk. If you guys are in Europe, let's talk. It doesn't matter where you are. I want to hear what's going on, because we're all going through some issues here. And it's not getting any easier. So I want to hear what you guys are dealing with on a daily basis. But thank you guys for tuning in. This has been Dylan, the Year Zero Report, and this is your daily brief for September 1st, 2022. I will see you guys tomorrow. Let's have a good rest of the week. Tomorrow's Friday. Hey. All right. See you guys tomorrow. Love ya.